Hi everybody. We're going to get started with some social studies today, so I need you to get out your colony chart paper that you filled in yesterday while you were watching the video on lesson 1, which talks about the New England colonies. I believe there were 4 of them. There are actually 5 columns, or 5 rows, but Plymouth Colony and Massachusetts Bay Colony were all part of Massachusetts. I just divided it up because they had 2 kind of different groups that were forming some settlements there. Then you had Connecticut and New Hampshire and Rhode Island that you listened to on that video. So I want to go over the video, or not the video, but over those charts. Make sure you filled in the information that you need from that video. So let's start with, you can see my reflection here. You see me right there? That's me. See, a wave. Let's start with that first big top chart that listed the colonies in the farthest column there, and we'll start with the Plymouth colony. I'm going to talk about that one here a little bit. Make sure you got this information that you see here written down. So Plymouth colony was part of Massachusetts colony. William Bradford started that with the Pilgrims, and they wanted religious freedom. Okay, so the Pilgrims came over with the Mayflower. They had the Mayflower Compact. They were kind of the first ones there. And then he talked about the Massachusetts Bay Colony with John Winthrop, and they were the Puritans. So their beliefs, again, they wanted to focus on their religious beliefs, kind of do their own thing in that colony as well. And we're going to look at that chart on your paper that also compares the Pilgrims to the Puritans and how they were very different. So these 2 groups of people settled this Massachusetts Bay Colony, and then from there, on the video, he showed you how it continued to grow out. It went north, it went south, it went west, it continued to grow and get bigger, which means they would start some new colonies, like Connecticut. Thomas Hooker, we compare here eventually John Winthrop and Thomas Hooker, and how their ideas and beliefs were very different, and how a colony or settlement should be run. So Connecticut is Thomas Hooker. And the followers and settlers for some of these weren't quite as obvious. Okay, and here he didn't use this column, but I like this column to show you that these Pilgrims were with William Bradford. The Puritans were with John Winthrop, and they had different beliefs, different thoughts. Here, some of these Puritans with John Winthrop moved down here with Thomas Hooker. Remember, because room was getting less and less, so they were expanding and pushing out into the land where those Native Americans are, and that's where we start to see conflicts, and we continue to see those conflicts. They too, religious freedom, so that's a popular one. They all wanted to maybe adjust and do something a little different with religion, or maybe kind of start their own beliefs as far as religion goes. You also have New Hampshire, they talked about briefly, and those were just, again, settlers from these 2 colonies, this Massachusetts Bay Colony and the Plymouth Colony, kind of pushing out and expanding, growing north into New Hampshire. Okay, so they were given kind of their own charter, and he talked about what a charter was. All right, and then we had those indentured servants. Remember, those indentured servants were those who their trip was paid for by some company over in England to send them over. Then they were working, okay, to earn their freedom. And once they earned their freedom, they had to go somewhere. So some of them might have ended up here in New Hampshire with those settlers that started that one. Okay, and they were looking for new opportunities. They were there for new opportunities, different things. They were trying to get away from, where they originally were, and wanted to do their own thing. Here we have Rhode Island. Roger Williams started Rhode Island, and we find out that he was kind of forced out of where he originally was from because he felt, and this is an important one, he felt that the government and the church should be separate. Okay, and that's something we see in our Constitution today. So that's an important one. Same thing with religious freedom. These are 2 we see today. Those are things that are in our Constitution and that we're given as Americans. Okay, this I left blank because they don't really talk about specific followers or settlers. But I'm sure it's just a lot of these people kind of might have migrated down with Roger Williams because they felt the same way he did. Okay, so if you need to pause it to fill any of this information in, please do so. Please pause, get it filled in. This chart's going to be very helpful with the worksheet and when you're studying for the test later on. Okay, but I'm going to continue on here so we can keep moving. All right. Let's look at the Pilgrims and the Puritans. This was down there, that bottom, kind of a T-chart comparing the two different groups of people and how they were different. So you have the Pilgrims over here who were separatists. They wanted to separate from that particular church they were part of, and they wanted to do their own thing. They wanted to start something new. Okay, where your Puritans, they just wanted to kind of take and tweak their church ideas. So they were going to reform it. They were going to create something new. Okay, then you have the different social status. Think for a minute, what does social status mean? Pilgrims were at low social status. Puritans had more social status. What does that mean? Think about it. So a social status is kind of like where you're at in society. Okay, are you higher up in society? Maybe you have more money or more materialistic things. So that's kind of where the Puritans were at, where the Pilgrims were maybe a little lower on that. They didn't have as much, but they were probably very resourceful as far as the things they used and what they did. Okay, and then I just put down here again, Pilgrims were with the Plymouth colony. Massachusetts Bay were the Puritans. Remember, these are both the same kind of bigger part of the colony, the bigger Massachusetts colony. So again, if you need to write these things down in that chart, pause it and do so. But for the most part, you should have them written down. Okay? And then the last chart you had to fill in was about John Winthrop and Thomas Hooker. So those were two founders, okay, of those different colonies. So John Winthrop, he said, was a very energetic governor. So he's lots full of energy, probably very involved, which made him very authoritative ruler. Okay, so he kept a lot of the power himself. He didn't give a lot of the power to his people. Okay, they probably didn't get to vote. They didn't have a representative kind of government where somebody represents you in the government. Here you'll see they're both Puritan ministers, or were Puritan ministers, and then you have the Massachusetts Bay Colony is who John Winthrop was in charge of, or was the founder of, and then Thomas Hooker was the Connecticut one. All right, and let's go back up here because these are some important things about Thomas Hooker. He limited government power, so he himself didn't have a lot of power, but he allowed people to vote. Okay, so people voted on the laws and what they wanted. It's also important to note that he wrote the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, so kind of the first formal, I guess you might call it, government plan. Okay, and all men, it didn't matter if they were Puritans or if they believed in some other religion, they all got to vote. Okay, if they owned land, they were able to vote in the government there. All right, I think that's my last slide. Yep. So let's talk about, let's go back here. Back here to this main one. All right, and I want you to make sure you have all that information written down. And then you have an assignment today to do on Schoology. It's going to be worksheet 5-1. You can use your notes. Okay, you can use the PDF as well. That might be helpful too, but a lot of the information is going to be right here from these charts that we just went over. And I want to make sure that you have those all written down and ready to go. And if you have any questions and you need to message me, okay, so we can get those answered and figured out. I think that should be it for right now.